Know what kind of a European person might say. Yeah, preparing for this, I wasn't sure what to wear. And I went to online and watched what Thomas is usually wearing. And one Sunday they had some sports clothes on, and the other. So I wasn't sure. I didn't know. And so my wife said, just wear a shirt, please. But if you're here for the first time, I just want to make sure I'm not Pastor Thomas. So if you don't like the message, please come back next week. So I'm not a regular. So I'm Kuldar. I'm from Estonia, and I'm a missionary. And I have a wife in Estonia. We also have one wife. And we have 4 kids. Albert is the oldest. Samuel, Matilda, and Helmi. They're in Estonia. They're not here. I'm here for the next 3.5 weeks, mostly visiting churches like Legacy and supporters, individual people, and I'll be traveling from different states. But it's always a pleasure to come here to San Diego. This morning when I was driving from Anaheim, I like the timing. It was lots of car, but it was all moving. So that's the difference here. There's always cars. One time they're not moving. So that's the Californian traffic, which I love it. But Josiah Venture is the organization, as you already heard from Thomas. This is the organization that has been in Eastern and Central Europe since 1991. And it started because, remember the wall in Berlin, when the wall came down, then some missionaries from America, they felt the need that in this region there's 35.1 million young people, and less than 1% knows Jesus. So because of the Soviet Union times, because of our background, we didn't have much knowledge about Jesus. And so Josiah Venture was established in Czech Republic, and soon they worked with Polish people, and then Slovakia, and then Croatia and Slovenia, and then now it's in 16 different countries, and Estonia is one of them. As we are all working with the same ministry, we do similar stuff with the young people, because young people they're all unique, but they live in the same culture. So we learn from each other, and so that's how we do this ministry in Estonia. But preparing for this Sunday, I know that we are in the end of the series of Biblical Women. And I was thinking, what should I share? One of the first women that came to my mind was actually Priscilla, wife of Aquila. And so I'm going to read a verse from Acts 18, and so we can learn from that couple how this marriage was actually a blessing for the city of Corinth and for us also. Let me read. After this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. And there he met the Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all Jews to leave Rome. Paul went to see them, and because he was a tent maker, as they were, he stayed and worked with them. Every Sabbath he reasoned in the synagogue, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. And then a couple of verses later, Paul stayed on in Corinth for some time. Then he left the brothers and sisters and sailed to Syria, accompanied by Priscilla and Aquila. So the book of Acts talks about the early church, as we know. We learn a lot about the shape and the character of Christianity and the secret of its power. Now today we read about Aquila and Priscilla, but to understand the content and the outline of the book of Acts, we see that in the beginning of the book, Jesus, just before he's sending out his disciples, he meets with them and says, I want you to take the gospel from Judea and Jerusalem to Samaria and into the other parts of the earth. This is it. The gospel is not supposed to be for one person, one group, one city, one culture. No, it's for all, and therefore needs to be expanding. The most part of the earth means it's supposed to go to different cultures and different places. Well, until the persecution and the execution of Stephen, Christians just mostly were in Jerusalem. And the first chapters of Book of Acts talks about that, how they were all in Jerusalem. But then persecution happens, and they are forced to go outside of Jerusalem. So the persecution was a good thing, we might say. But I'm not actually saying that, but sometimes under persecution, good things still happen. And because of that, this happened. The Latin word for sent is missio, which means, and now we take that word to our languages, and it's mission. So that means church on the mission. And we finally see this happening starting from chapter 8 and on. And church is finally church in mission, the way Jesus actually wanted it to be. So this text and other 4 books that talks about Aquila and Priscilla, we read that Aquila with his wife Priscilla. The text doesn't say this time Aquila with his wife, and that's it. Because so many times during that times we read from the Bible that there was 5,000 men that Jesus fed. We don't hear anything about women or kids because it was not needed to say. I mean, culture was different. But here he actually says Aquila and Priscilla, and I wonder why. And I think there's a reason. Paul really wanted us and the churches during that time to know that Priscilla has some very important role, and the world needs Priscillas. So Paul met them, and actually it says that they actually take him to his home, to their home, and he lives there. And you might think, is it because they have the common occupation? They are both tent makers. Maybe that's why it was easier to go to work in the morning with the same donkey. Or what does it mean? Why they are together? But the text says that actually it's beyond that. They actually, all of them had passion about Jesus, and they shared Jesus in Aquila's and Priscilla's home, but also in the synagogue when they went and talked with the Jews. As I shared, I come from Estonia, but when I was born, Estonia wasn't a free country, it was under Soviet Union. So until I was 11 years old, I lived in Soviet Union, I might say. And Soviet Union looked like this. When you went to the store, there was nothing. Maybe there was only soap. I remember I went in and my mom said, go and try to find the bread. I went to the store and there was no bread. So you had to know somebody who would know somebody who would call to somebody to bring you one bread. And every household had different things. For example, my aunt worked in the chocolate factory, and they always had chocolate at home. And the other friend, his father was working with the electrician company, and they always had those wonderful different color wires at home, which was great. And I had stickers because my dad was working with a furniture company, and they used stickers. So I was changing my stickers to the wires. So that was my childhood. And sometimes when you needed to have a meat, then there was this family who could give you a meat, and you have to give something to them. And then in our house, there was a time when we still had those coupons, and the government gave you coupons, and you can only buy a certain amount of things. For example, 20 liters of gasoline was maximum. But our parents, they changed alcohol coupons to sugar coupons. And so that's why we had lots of sugar at home all the time. Because everybody wanted to have the alcohol coupons, right? So I was raised in the Soviet Union, and church wasn't completely forbidden. It was just very heavily controlled. That means that they put everybody together, Lutherans, Baptists, Pentecostals, Methodists, free churches, missionary churches. Everybody had to go to the same church so that they could control you. And usually in the first row, there was some Russian spies with their recorders trying to catch everything you say, and they were praising God as an act. But actually they were, and so they were listening. If you say something against Soviet Union, then you will go to Siberia. But other than that, it was okay for them. But because it was controlled Sunday, there was nothing else. You couldn't organize anything else than only Sunday services. But of course, people wanted to have more Jesus. And so my mom and dad, and actually my grandparents already, they always open up their homes. But to have a meeting at home, you had to have an excuse. And so that means every birthday party we had, it was like a Sunday service. As a kid, it was super boring. Because it was just singing and then sharing, singing, sharing for 3 hours. And because my sister had a birthday during the same time, we got the one gift, just share it. So I remember that about those times. But actually, it was unique because my dad just celebrated 75th birthday party, and I was the host, and he had exactly the same birthday party still. Because they're used to it now. It's still somebody, and then he tells me 5 minutes before the party starts, go and tell that person that he needs to share in 5 minutes. I was like, why now? He said, he's going to be ready. That's how people came. But this was my childhood, those homes. Just like Aquila and Priscilla, I wonder their home was probably something like that. And when I was a kid, I never heard that, oh, this is Agu, which is my dad's name. Oh, this is Agu's home. They always said Agu and Leah, which is my mom's name. It was always Agu and Leah's place, Agu and Leah's place. Actually, my mom was so active Priscilla, that she actually asked so many kids to come to our Sunday school, to our home, which was every week. And she was one of the founder of Sunday school in Estonia. And so she just cut out all those biblical characters, and that's how we learned about Jesus. Until one day there was this spy with his kids in front of our door and heard that, oh, I heard there is something going on with the kids here. And then my dad understood and stepped up and said, well, he probably lied. He said, no, there's nothing going on here. Nothing happened. It's a good thing. But that's how we lived. And because of their unity, their marriage was actually a stronghold of this church. And this is what Aquila and Priscilla were. They were the leaders of the church during that time, the house church. And because their unity. The text doesn't actually say that there was 2 theological PhD students who married, and praise God, through that the church started to grow. It doesn't say that. No, it says this couple from Pontus who arrived from Italy to Corinth opened up their home to their co-worker, and through that, they become one of the cornerstones of the early church. And I wonder, how is that so simple sometimes and so significant? And actually, it's not just me thinking about that. Paul talks about Priscilla and Aquila a lot later in his books. He sends greetings to them. He takes him to another cities. And also, when we read 1 Corinthians 13, when Paul talks about love, which we usually use that passage when we facilitate the wedding, but I will read this. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not invite. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Reading this, it's a beautiful text, but at the same time I think, Paul, you don't know that. You were never married. You don't know what it means to be, you don't know what it means to be resistant, and you don't know what it means to be patient, and how many times I have to be patient. You don't know that. But scholars have said that he writes those kind of texts because he has seen that very closely. And he's seen that because of Priscilla and Aquila living in their house, seeing how this couple was living life together on the mission. I want to show you some statistics about marriages in Estonia, how we are doing. So if you see the timeline underneath, you see that people were married, and quite few divorces were actually in the 50s and 60s. But then something happened in 1990, 1991 and 1992. And that was the time when we got our freedom. Until then, we were part of the Soviet Union, and then we became a free country. So freedom, the name freedom, we didn't understand the word, probably. And people thought that freedom means that I don't have to have any responsibilities anymore. And so that's why they felt like I don't need to get married. And if I get married, I can always divorce. And so until this day, we still have 50% marriages are getting into divorce, which is kind of sad. And we have other sad statistics, and it's mostly because of its kind of ungodly country, I would say, and the area. But because of that, we actually see this young generation that is growing up in Estonia. We see a lot of broken relationships and broken homes and broken lives. And this is our mission, and this is our compassion to work actually with these young people. So, but when I was a teenager, my future wife, Margaret, and I was part of the Lutheran church, and she was part of the Baptist church. And as I already shared, it was okay in Estonia to talk with everybody. But I started to go to her church when we started dating, because her father was a pastor, and I had to show off that I'm actually this nice boy. And so I went there, and then we were planning our wedding, and there was this one older couple called Mel and Mary Lou Duke. Some of you actually know them, knew them. And actually this older couple from America, navigator, missionaries, they asked us, would you like to come every Thursday to our home? And we want to help you to prepare for marriage. And as a guy, you don't want to, like, you know everything already. Somehow my wife doesn't know. And so that's why we went. And so we had to go, and every Thursday we were there. And I don't remember much about the teachings, but I remember the old furniture, and I remember the warm food, and I remember the smiley face, and the warmth feeling that I always had, how much they loved us and welcomed us. And it's until this day I think back about this couple, and something in those Thursday evenings changed in us. So that really actually changed us. And I think this broken and old furniture tells a story. You don't always have to have a lot to love people actively. Aquila and Priscilla were not citizens of Corinth. Remember, they were pushed out from Rome. They were immigrants who were forced to live away from their home, yet they opened up their home to preach the gospel. Being an outcast, an immigrant, gives you a right to be actually bitter. I feel that. Like, what do you mean? You're pushing me out from my own home. What do you mean you don't let me do church meetings when I'm actually living in Estonia and you're Soviet? What do you mean? What do you mean you're better than me? I have a reason to be bitter, right? But Priscilla and Aquila, you don't have that act coming out from their mouths. They don't talk about that way, because their hearts are different. Their hearts are not bitter, even though they have a reason. Their hearts are changed by the gospel. And actually the story goes on. What happens next with Priscilla and Aquila? Paul sees them as equal partners in church leadership. And when Paul goes away from Corinth, he takes Aquila and Priscilla with him. And then later he leaves them to Ephesus. He moves on, but they stay in Ephesus. And something happens in Ephesus, and I will read that also. There's a guy or a man called Apollos. Meanwhile, a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was a learned man with a thorough knowledge of the scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and he spoke with great favor and thought about Jesus accurately, though he knew only the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue, and when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they invited him to their home and explained to him the way of God more adequately. So there's this man, Apollos, who is very smart, very well-trained speaker. And he teaches about Jesus, even though he doesn't know much. He just knows one story, and it's about John. And we all know this might happen sometimes when you come to church. You come to church on Sunday morning, and then you see this young, weird, short Estonian with a funny accent speaking. And you're not sure if you get much out of it. But this is what the human nature is usually. We want the best for us. We want the best message that really changes us daily. There's a photo I found from Instagram that actually it's easy to go and criticize people, but to go and help somebody, it's much more difficult. There's a story about that. A man arrives to a lonely island because of the ship accident. And he arrives there alone. He's the only survivor. He's a great builder, and he stays there. And he's sure that one day somebody will find me. But until then, I'm going to be active. And so he starts building. He starts building a home for himself, and then a school, and then an opera house, and restaurants. And after 8 years, it's like a Tom Hanks movie, right? After 8 years, somebody comes and, they find him and tell him, hey, we found you, let's go. And just before they are leaving, he says, don't you want to see what I built? Come and see. And so the people say, okay, let's go and see. And so he said, so this is my home, and this is the church I built. And people say, wait, you already showed us the church. He said, well, this was the church I used to go. And so that's... So we want to have a best from the preachers, and we want to have the best because this is our nature. And we tend to be critical if something is not there. And when you look at Aquila and Priscilla, remember their hearts were motivated by love. And they're acting differently. They had all the reasons to do a date night now, just the two of them, and go around and share. Look, Apollos, he doesn't know much. Look at us, we're so holy. They had the reason to do that because they were more holier, probably. But they don't do that. They go to Apollos, this young man, and they do what they do the best. They ask him over. They ask him, come to our place. And they actually teach him teach him more about Jesus. What a great heart to do that. There's so much to learn from Aquila and Priscilla. Back in 2009, when we were married already 4 years, then we got the calling from God to become a missionaries and work with the young people. And we didn't know much. There was probably people who were thinking, what kind of theology is that? But after connecting with the young soccer players and disco players and young kids, we felt compassion and felt love towards them. And I remember I was in the first soccer camp in 2010, and there was 34 boys, and I asked them, how many of you have both mom and dad at home? And 32 of them said, I don't have. So just 2 boys have mom and dad at home. Dads are usually gone. Dads are usually drunk, or they live in Finland because there's bigger salaries, or they feel shamed and they leave their families behind. They go and get together with the next wife, and then they usually stay with them. That's the statistics usually. But there's so many young girls and boys who live lives without father or sometimes mother. And our vision statement in Josiah Venture actually says that we want to see a movement of God among the youth of Central and Eastern Europe that finds its home in the local church and transforms society. And yes, we saw these young people accepting Christ and growing in Christ, and then they joined our churches. But how do we see society changed? And now, since 2010, it's 15 years later, those 13-year-old boys who didn't have fathers, most of them are married now. And some of them have kids. And those who have kids, and none of them are divorced. And some of them who have kids, I see from their Facebook and Instagram how they are creating family days for their kids. So they're creating something that they never had to their kids. It takes one generation that switches, that the whole nation will be different. So society will be changed. And Josiah venture, Josiah comes from the name King Josiah, who was also a young boy who said, I'm not going to be like my grandfather. I'm not going to be like my dad, who were horrible kings. I'm going to be different kings. I'm going to love God and love people. And because of that, change happened. And this is what we want to see, this young generation stepping up. And another thing we saw that actually, yes, they accept Christ, and some of them come to church, but they don't stick to churches. And I saw that some churches don't know how to actually accept the young people. And so we felt the need to plant a new church 11 years ago. And we Estonians also know that they don't want to come to church buildings because it's scary. It's usually for old people. And there's nothing for us. Because again, it's not in our culture to go to church as a building. So what we try to do, ask them to come to our homes. And we do the same things. We read Bible together, we worship together, we even say what's going on next week. We just announcements. We have announcements. We have preaching. We have a small group. We have prayer time. Everything is the same. House church is not the better church than a traditional church. It's not the only right model. We just saw that this is the language Estonians right now understand. And they love to come on Sunday morning and eat pancakes together and listen about Jesus. And I'll show you one video about our church.
8 years ago, a few families got a clear calling to move to Tallinn, Estonia, to plant a church. This church should be centered around Jesus and made up of communities living life together on mission. And this is how our mission statement is in Estonian. Jeesuse kesksed kogukonnad, kes elavad elu koos missioonil. Sounds pretty good, right? We prayed to find homes not too far from each other to become hubs of hospitality for people in our communities and a way for them to meet the living God. He answered our prayers quickly, and now we're gathering as 3 communities in northern and central Tallinn. We've seen people who have never heard the gospel before come to faith and be baptized. We've seen people who had lost their hope discover it through Jesus. As a church, we invest in keeping our marriages healthy and strong. We support each other's families and help disciple our children as one church body. Taking care of the refugees who have come to our city because of the war happening in their hometowns is just a new reality. They live amongst us, but really just want to get back home. The same desire that we all have deep down, to be close to our loving Father in our true home. Happily, while we're trying to do our best, Jesus is doing immeasurably more at the same time in and through us. We still dream that in every part of Tallinn there could be homes that people can come to and be a part of the story that God is making there and ultimately respond to the gospel.
Thank you. This video is actually a couple of years old, and he said 3 communities. We had 5 communities last year, but something happened in January this year. Is there anybody who's Gen Z here? I think you guys, right? Yes. Don't you love Gen Z? I love them. I think this is the best generation we've ever had. And Gen Z, these are the people who are born 1997 till 2012, between that time. And in our area, they are the least religious that we ever encounter. Yet, however, they are the most spiritual that we ever seen. And we never seen this generation in our last 34 years in our Josiah Venture ministry. But these young people, they are hungry for God. They love to learn about that. They go and they have information. They come and ask me, is that right? They buy Bibles, which is unique. Usually they want it for free, but they're buying Bibles. They're seeking wisdom from different places, and why this is happening right now? I think the world has been shaking around us in the last years. We've been in COVID years, and then the war started, and it's still going, and we're scared. What's next? What will happen? What will happen to me next? And if there's nothing stable anymore, you start looking what is a little bit more stable and that has future. And because of that, so many young people started to come to our church. And in the month of January, we tripled our numbers. So now we're actually trying to teach disciple makers more quickly. Otherwise, I'm afraid we're losing them soon if we're not taking care of them. But we have some of the house groups are already too big. You can't fit people there anymore. And so we try to always raise new leaders to send out and open up their homes again. So that's the idea. But when Priscilla and Aquila heard Apollos speaking, what they did is that they really asked him to come to their home and they teach him more about Jesus. What if we're going to do that with this young generation? Yes, we should go out and ask people to come to Legacy Church because this is a great church. Come on, it's wonderful. And Thomas, what a great preacher. Great, but I also believe that in our neighborhoods and in our places that we live daily lives, we should be hubs of hospitalities for our kids and people around us. So that, yes, sometimes it's not really reasonable to open up your home to everybody you don't know, but open up your life, talk with people, ask them questions and let them ask questions from you. So this is what I think the gospel changed hearts might do as we're learning from Aquila and Priscilla. And their identity, self-worth, was not earned as accomplishment. They had radical identity, gospel-based identity. And gospel-based identity changes you so you don't feel the need to be better than others. And the gospel-based identity gives you a heart to love and serve others just like Jesus did for us on the cross. He came on earth, he loved us, and then went on the cross, died and raised from dead, and opened up heavenly home for us. So now we can embody him and say that we can do that with our own small homes and our families so that people would have glimpse from heaven already during their lifetime here. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you who you are. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the message you did for us. Jesus, because of that, we want to give our hearts to you. Please take our hearts and change them. Me too, it's not always easy to be nice to people or loving to people. Sometimes you're tired. Sometimes you are bitter. Sometimes you feel you don't have enough. Sometimes you feel, I already owe my time to my kids anyways. All those excuses sometimes come to my mind. But Jesus, if you let you work in us, your kingdom is upside down kingdom. It's not about balancing time so much. It's not about putting yourself first and then see what else will happen. Jesus, your kingdom is different, and sometimes we just too lazy to ask that your kingdom would come to our lives. Jesus, I pray that you would bless Legacy people. Thank you for these wonderful giving hearts. Thank you for these families. And I pray that you would live amongst them and all the great things that are about to happen, about the new building and everything else. Jesus, I pray that they would feel your presence every day. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
And let's give him a hand.